As always, such a pleasure to be here for this conference being put together by Raju Bhatia and his team. Thank you for inviting me to moderate this panel with two very distinguished panelists that we have today with us. Before we get started with the panel discussion, I just would like to set a context for the areas that we are trying to explore in this short 15-20 minutes. In the morning session, we heard a lot about AI, how AI has invaded the business, the boardrooms, various functions, and how it is beginning to not just transform, but maybe even change the contours of how we work. So, taking off from there, the theme that we are going to explore in the next few minutes is, if we know or if we recognize that AI is very much here for us to handle, for us to live with, we don't have much of an option there, looks like it, then what does it mean for HR function? What does it mean for the leadership roles? What does it mean for us to reorient our working and rebalance the way IQ, EQ, and AQ, which is the adaptability quotient, have to be put in place? So that's the question which is topmost in the minds of everybody. And let me straight away go to Lance, who is representing a healthcare organization, and he is leading the HR function. Particularly, he, in his capacity of leading the HR function, he is involved with bringing in technology to make things better for his organization. So, Lance, can you please tell us, in the context of the changes that we are beginning to see with AI, firstly, can you throw some examples of how you have seen AI getting deployed in the healthcare industry, in your organization in particular, and what are the outcomes that you have been able to experience on account of AI deployment?
Yeah. Great, thank you, Uma. Good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. I'll do just maybe a short introduction and tell you a little bit about why I'm here on the other side of the world, sharing some thoughts with you today. So as Uma mentioned, my name's Lance Bradshaw. I work for Intermountain Health. We're a large nonprofit healthcare system based in the United States. We have 35 hospitals and 400 clinics that we provide services in, and close to 70,000 employees. That number has grown significantly over the last 40 or 50 years as we became an organization. And so with that, we continue to face the labor shortages and the unique challenges that aren't just in the United States, but we see throughout the world. So my role in particular is in workforce transformation. So what we look at is how we can build the workforce of the future. How can we continue to deliver on the mandate that we have as a healthcare system to continue to deliver the best high-quality care at an affordable rate? Because it's no secret that healthcare in the United States is very expensive, and we're not getting as good of outcomes by spending an additional dollar. We're not seeing the result of that spend. So what my role focuses on is, how do we build that workforce of the future? How do we adopt AI within our workforce? But instead of continuing to add headcount, we want to leverage the existing workforce that we have. So a couple of outcomes that we've focused on. So my role in particular, I support the other HR functions. So there's about 1,200 other employees that work within HR at Intermountain Health. And so my role is to support them in adopting AI into their workflows, and not only adoption, but realization of value. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're speaking about, right? There's plenty of tools and technology out there that we could potentially implement, but our goal is really to leverage that value. So we do value analysis, we look at business use case, we're trying to understand how, if we leverage these tools, what's the impact that it's having, not only on our workforce, on our caregivers that take care of our patients, but at the end of the day, healthcare is a noble calling. We are there to take care of the patients that we have stewardship over. And so those are the types of outcomes we look for. So maybe I'll just mention two and then let Emmanuel introduce himself as well. So one, within the HR function, we look at how are we adopting tools like Microsoft Copilot, other tools that we're leveraging, and are they actually delivering that value that I spoke about? So we do a full value analysis. We look at adoption across the entire workforce, and what are the use cases that, as we implement those tools, are they actually moving the needle on our business outcomes? So we've looked at profitability for us as an organization. I mentioned that we're a nonprofit system, but we have to keep the lights on. And so we look at, are we making good use of the dollars that that we have stewardship over? And so we look at profitability. Last year we were successful in meeting the KPIs that we had specific to our leadership assignments, but that's just scratching the surface. Healthcare, as I mentioned, is very expensive in the United States, and so we're also looking at how we can incorporate AI in different clinical environments as well. So I'm happy to share a little bit more about that later, but that's kind of at a high level the things that we're focused on at Intermountain Health.
Thank you, Lance, for sharing those examples. Before I move on to Emmanuel, I'd like to have a second question. I would like to ask you a second question. This healthcare industry is one industry where emotional quotient is the most important, apart from, of course, the care that you provide with the right kind of expertise, the doctors, the nursing care, the medical understanding, all of that is there. But emotional quotient is supposed to be the most important. At the same time, today we are talking about adaptability quotient on account of AI coming in, and when you gave those examples, I'm sure there would have been some amount of resistance to change, to adapt. How did you cope with all of that? And how do you particularly balance emotional quotient and then bring in the adaptability around that?
Yeah, great question. So at the end of the day, both HR and healthcare are about the people. And so that's always where we start. Yes, the technology is amazing. You've seen examples already this morning, and I'm sure we'll hear throughout the conference, all the amazing things that the technology can do, but we start with the people. And so our leaders, we ensure that they do have a high level of emotional intelligence so that they can help. Healthcare is a difficult industry to be in, right? You're dealing with people's lives, loss of life, people that are sick. And so that's by starting with that emotional intelligence, we can then make that connection with our people and support them through those challenging times that they face. So one example that we have is we have a leadership development course that's called Leading Through Others. And these are for senior leaders who manage leaders of leaders. And so what they do is they spend 6 months focused on this Leading Through Other cohort and coming together and sharing experiences and simulating those difficult conversations that they have to have with their caregivers, with fellow patients, with others that they interact with across the organization. And so by modeling that, we can then set them up for success going forward. AI can also play a huge role in that. I'll be speaking a little bit later this afternoon on the power of leadership confidence and how we need to not only assess, are we ready for the technology, but the change management piece that you talked about. And I think that's the AQ focus as well. So that's how we approach it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on today.
Okay. Thank you, Lance. So let me move to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, Lance, incidentally, this is the first time he's in India. So welcome to India and enjoy the experience.
Thank you.
Whereas Emmanuel has been to India multiple times, and he has worked with various industries, representing various organizations in Africa and many parts of Africa. This morning he had released a book as well. And as a management consulting firm, he is obviously using AI tools in many different ways. So can we understand a little bit about how AI tools are enabling you, Emmanuel, in your own consulting approach to particularly HR compliances and related areas?
Thank you so much. My name is Emmanuel, and I'm very glad to be part of the panel. I think this is Europe, Asia, and this is Africa. And I'm really happy to respond to what you have asked me. One thing I would like to let you know is that this is not my first time here. I think this is the 5th time in India, and out of World HRD, I have managed to build various connections from different cities and provinces across India. So I'm running strategy and an HR consulting firm, fully based in Zimbabwe, but we have expanded to Zambia, we have expanded to South Africa, we have also expanded to Botswana and Namibia. The main reason why we have expanded, we have seen that Africa has always been on the lagging in terms of issues to do with AI, technology, and whatsoever. So we saw it as a gap to cover, since I was always being in India, to cover that gap and try to bridge between Asia and Africa. So here is my story. First time when I came, it was 2020. I met a guy who developed some system from Pune. Then we developed a system called Skillotech. By then, 2020 in Africa, people used to write job descriptions, like formally do interviews, recruitment. Then we introduced that system in Africa, and believe me, it was a plus because it was something that was still new, and people were still like introducing issues to do with recruitment applications or whatsoever. So it was a plus for us. Then we saw that no, there's an opportunity. So as a strategy and consulting firm, I deal with a lot of industries. Healthcare, we have clients. We also have clients in the manufacturing sector. We also have clients in the construction sector. By the way, in the construction sector, currently we are dealing with Oman Shapuj company. I know a lot of you may know it. It's an Indian company, OSCO. They are constructing Afrexim Bank in Zimbabwe, and we are their main consulting firm that also assists them. So we are in a lot of, we have a lot of clients in different sectors. So we are not only HR consultant, but we're also strategy consultants. So when we get in, we identify gaps. And some of the gaps, believe me, the solutions is AI tools. Recently, we were in Swaziland, and last year when I was in Indo, we met 47 billion. It's an organization that also developed various AI tools in organizations. So we noticed that most African countries, there is a challenge of skills gap, where like absolute skills are being produced by universities. So there is an application, the tool that they have, where there is a linkage between the business people, those that are skilled, the universities, as well as the students. The main reason would be to cover that skills gap. So that tool is for the business people, that are the one that feeds into the universities. But the business people, the one that are currently working, are the one that knows relevant stuff in the industries. So they feed to the universities, and the universities now teaches the students relevant information. And believe me, it has helped a lot in a lot of institutions, changes in the curriculum, because they now teach things that are relevant. So in summary, to us, it has been very helpful, because we are not only HR consultants, but sometimes as strategy consultants, there are certain gaps that are being covered by AI tools. And us as Africans, we have got a lot of partners, Indian partners that we have, and we are open to more partnerships, to those that like to keep trial their solutions, as long as they cover different gaps. So in summary, I think that's all what I can say.
Thank you for that overview. You know, one of the criticisms leveled, or rather you can say, disadvantages of AI, as many people have been saying, it is a very expensive proposition. It is very difficult to implement. It requires humongous talent and the wherewithal to really make a difference. But on the other hand, if you were to look at the real advantage AI has, which if we are able to identify, and bring it into our organization, it can be a great leveler. The expertise, which is otherwise normally available only with a few people, because of AI tool, because of ChatGPT, because of other generative AI tools, you now have the expertise available even to the remotest part of the world and for those who may not necessarily be AI experts. So we have to have that kind of ingenuity to identify tools, which is what Emmanuel spoke about so beautifully. And it is so relevant even within India. We have large companies, we have tiny companies, we have not-for-profits, and we have remote states where such a talent pool may not be available. But with the collective ability to identify tools or to build tools, it is possible to have such breakthrough solutions. So I was glad to hear how you have been able to pick some of the tools and bring about a difference in various parts of Africa. Now, before I move to Lance again, Emmanuel, I would like to hear from you. In the context of introducing AI tools in some of these countries, what kind of, you can say, changes you have already seen, or you have been able to encourage organizations to bring about such changes so that these tools are successful?
Thank you. One thing that I've always tell my clients is AI has come. It's here. It's already here. I normally tell some of the speakers that say the future of AI. No, there is no future of AI. It's already there. So one thing that I always tell them is AI doesn't work alone. It needs human interaction. It needs a human hand. So I normally call when a human hand shakes the AI hand. So these things work together, which brings us to various intelligences that we were talking about: adaptive intelligence, emotional intelligence, IQ, intelligence, conscience. So there are a lot of intelligences that we need. And by the way, they are not the only intelligences that we need so that we augment with AI. We also have diversity intelligence. How do you deal with diversity and AI in organizations? We also have change intelligence. How do you deal with change intelligence in AI? So to me, I've always tell them that you need other skills apart from AI so that whatever you're going to introduce is going to be a success. If you leave other skills and focus on AI only, you'll find that there are some things that you lack. For example, I normally tell people that you will never come to a point where you see that AI to have emotions. Crying. Anyone have ever heard a robot like feeling for someone? No, you will never get to a point of that. So, which means those skills are the skills that are supposed to be developed now with various organizations so that they augment the AI.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Moving to you, Lance, I would like to ask you about the fact that AI agents have entered into our workforce, and they will continue to be part of the workforce. So the question as HR professional for you is, how do you decide when you did mention about cost as one of the factors. You did mention sometimes availability of the right talent pool not being available. So you're beginning to use maybe AI in some of those areas. But what I would like to understand is, if as part of your workforce, you have some AI agents and maybe you have some people. So when you have human resources and you have AI agents working together, how should people learn to adapt and cope with this new species of, you can say, new identity, which is now invaded the workforce? How do they cope with them?
Yeah, great question. And I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like, right? I think it's changing so rapidly that the model will continue to evolve. So maybe I'll just speak in terms of how we look at it today, and that may change, tomorrow. But in general, we've seen a huge uptake in individuals feeling more comfortable with interacting with this technology. Initially, a couple of years ago, we looked at it as a threat. It was going to come in, it was going to take my job. If it can do it better than I can do, then I'm no longer needed, right? But I think as we've continued to evolve, we now see that it's actually unlocking additional potential in me that I didn't even know I had, right? If I can free up the mundane tasks, the administrative stuff that I was spending so much of my time doing, now I can focus more on the relationship building, on the personal and professional development aspects of my role. And so I think that's how we're kind of figuring out what that right balance is, moving from a threat to truly enabling and empowering you as a workforce. So one example is, as we deployed, I mentioned Microsoft Copilot. Copilot Studio was a great tool for our IT team to be able to build and deploy agents, right? But the average kind of front-end or frontline user was not comfortable with that, right? That was outside their skill set. But as we've tried to democratize that more, we've had open town halls and office hours to support our workforce to say, you can build your own agent, right? And in the past, that used to be a threat because IT would say, well, if you can build it yourself, you don't need to come to me anymore. And so that makes my role, irrelevant or obsolete. And so we're changing that whole dynamic to say, no, the saying goes that the rising tide raises all boats, right? And so as we're able to put these tools into the hands of the individual users that actually know the work, they own the business, they can start seeing a difference. And then it's, I think in the earlier session, they talked about the flywheel, right? Where we see that success starting to be systemic, where it goes across the entire organization. And then that partnership can be distilled down to the individual business owners. So HR can support them in that, but as I mentioned, they know their business better than anyone. And so by giving them the right tools and technologies, they can start solving those real world use cases in their own environment and not wait for 6 months until someone gets to their ticket. So that's the balance where and putting these tools into the hands of the end user. I think we've seen a lot of success thus far.
Okay. So my one last question before we take questions from the audience. This is about leadership. You spoke about democratizing AI. You talked about how, in an organization you will find suddenly the number of people that we have in the organization shrinking. And we have seen this even with large organizations like Microsoft, Amazon, Google. Many of them are beginning to look at why do we need all of these people if their jobs can be handled by the automated codes, for instance. So as a leader, as the CEO of the organization, one day you have 10,000 people, a few months down the line, the organization is beginning to shrink. So what does that do to the motivation of others that you want to retain? What kind of strategic partnership, therefore, HR function has to provide to the leadership, to the CEOs of teams and organization, such that the business is able to move forward and people do not suddenly think about the fact that maybe I'm no longer required here and I'm therefore going to get demotivated. Yeah. So what are the lessons or what are the key takeaways you have on this front?
Yeah. That is the exact conversation we have every single day in HR at Intermountain Health. And we've reframed it to say, instead of saying we don't need all these people, we still need the people, but we may not need the exact job that they're doing today, right? And so what we do is instead of saying, well, let's just lay off a large portion of the organization, only to find out next month we might need them back because we found an additional role for them. We're very thoughtful about if we go through what we call health system optimization, so we're constantly looking at the makeup of our teams to make sure we have the right workforce to meet all the needs of the patients that we take care of in our organization. As we go through that health system optimization process, our first thought is what skills, how can we upskill and reskill the existing people we have so that we can continue to retain them in the organization. I think too many organizations have this knee-jerk reaction to say, well, cost is creeping up, so labor is a great place to pull that lever and let go of a large portion of the organization. So what we do is we realize our workforce the makeup is going to look different going forward. We may have fewer FTEs, but through natural attrition, if those individuals choose to leave the organization, those that stay, we want to find places for them. And so we have a very thoughtful, intentional conversation with all of our leaders to say, we have this individual, they're no longer needed in this role in particular, but here are all the skills that they do have. How can we redeploy them in a way that we can continue to leverage, take advantage of the skills that they do have, or give them new opportunities to learn new skills? And so we have a very robust skills intelligence environment to make sure that we're not too short-sighted and just let go of people because all of a sudden, costs are creeping up a little bit. So it's all part of the overall value analysis that we look at so that we're fully leveraging our workforce.
So what we understand is HR is becoming much more strategic at this point of time than probably even in the previous few years, previous few generations. And so in this context of managing AI within HR function and acting as a strategic partner with the leaders of the organization, HR will have to rethink its own role. And I think this will take another long discussion. So we have very limited time. We are going to stop here and see if there are one or two questions we can take from the audience, and then we can wrap up. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Charles. I've come from Hong Kong. I'm a Canadian who's lived in Hong Kong 30 years. And I have a question for Lance. And my question is, what are the top sort of 3 to 5 skills that you see or foresee that where you could have the opportunity to retrain your workforce?
Great question, and hello to a Canadian. I'll be in Toronto next week, so...
Excellent. I won't be. I'll be in Hong Kong.
All right. Looking forward to it. I would say it's going to be dependent on the unique area of our organization. So skills in a clinical setting for our nursing staff are going to look very different than our business setting. So it's probably going to be dependent on the business area. But I would say in general, some of the things that we've already talked about, that ability to adapt. Most of this technology is not the tool itself, but it's the change management piece of it, right? So the ability to navigate change and lead out on it, even when we don't have absolute certainty, I think is a critical skill. So that may sometimes sound like a soft skill to say, you have confidence without certainty, but really that ability to lead teams is really what we look for at Intermountain. And then maybe one other skill is, as we leverage AI, we have to trust but verify, right? I think the interesting thing that we've seen is some people in the organization say, great, we sign a contract, we flip the switch, it's going to solve all of our problems overnight, right? And so we need leaders that can see where we're going, right? They have that visionary leadership and that aspect within their skill set, but they also can bring their team along and verify, are we going in the right direction? Instead of this kind of blindly, saying, well, our organization wants to adopt AI, so we're just going to go wherever it takes us. No, you are still, we've heard human in the loop. We like to say at Intermountain, human at the helm, right? Where we are actually leading out on it. The AI is there to support us, and it's enabling and empowering a lot more than maybe we could have done in the past. But we're still in control, right? We have that governing frontal lobe that is going to show us this is the direction we want to go, and that's why we're still in the business of people in healthcare and in HR.